Hi guys, it is Shira. It is day 3, and I am here still doing this thing. Yesterday we talked about how I felt about my mother and how I've been longing for acceptance, warmth, kindness, compassion from her my whole life, and it just feels like rejection and abandonment, with a little bit of blackmail and bribe, but that she's also my rock and my person. It's a very fine line I walk. So today I thought I would try and be a little bit more positive and tell you the happy things I remember from those first 5 years, and a little bit more about my dad. And today I'm very grateful for shelter because there's a blizzard outside, and there are a lot of people right now that do not have shelter because there's no affordable housing in Minneapolis. I'm working on it, one thing at a time. Feeling safe in your shelter. From as far back as I can remember, I'm gonna go with probably the first big girl bed that my dad tucked me far too tight into once and never tucked the bed in again. I had an intense fear almost of disappointing everyone. I heard all about my grandmother Molly, how I looked like her, her behaviors, what she did, who she was. I was being told who I was going to be. Very simple. And after that thing with Steve, it got worse, but I will say that at about 3, I remember very vividly feeling a connection to someone in the room with me and actually hearing the voice. And I truly believe it was a relative of mine. And because it's happened since, I don't know, I don't hear voices. Yes, I do feel other people and spirits. It was not a fear of dying, it was an intense fear of living. It was a fear of abandonment, which stepped from an absentee father, not by choice. He didn't want to be gone. He was in St. Louis working. He would take my mother's cousins out to Fridays. He was providing, but he was absent. And my mom was needed elsewhere. She had 2 younger children to tend to, one who was allergic to milk and very vocal about it. But I do remember being happy. I remember being in Florida, terrified of my dad's sister because she was screaming at me in Walt Disney World. And I couldn't have been more than 3. But I was scared of her, terrified of her. But I was still happy. I felt happy and safe with both parents. That started to dissipate. A lot. And I felt scared of my mother's tough love. I think once I told the skating rink when I was 7 that it ate my dime for a cup of soup, and she made me go tell the rink that I stole from them. I remember hiding under the living room tables from her. I was so scared. I just wanted her to love me like them. I don't think that's happened yet. But my dad always made me feel special, connected. He did me no favors. He compared me to his mother, and make no mistake, Molly Ackerman was a pillar of a community in the greatest era of all, the baby boomers. How can you be her? You can't. It was never going to work. But at my mother's funeral, at my grandmother's funeral, and I was scared of my grandmother too. She'd brush my hair hard, and she would yell at me. She didn't say I love you a lot. She wasn't very warm. I think she was probably warmer with her grandchildren than she was with her kids. But at my grandmother's funeral, I thought I would be sitting with my parents. I was 8 years old almost. No. To this day, I think my mom thinks it was a choice. It wasn't a choice, Mom. I felt very obligated to have to sit in the back, away from my family. All of my family. My Auntie Goldie, my Auntie Virginia taught me how to knit that week. When we sat Shiva, my grandfather had hair. Things were okay. I hadn't really started to eat emotions yet. That would change shortly. The worst part about feeling rejected by an immediate family member is that rejection is taught to other members of your family. It took a long time for me to be able to compartmentalize my life and the traumas, because that is all it is. One trauma on top of another for 40 years. And when you don't feel safe in your home and you don't feel grounded, you will not be safe in your head. And that will start to affect how you interact with people. Instead of talking to them and looking them in the eye, you'll look down and away. Instead of sitting up straight and being confident, you slouch and you don't want to be there. I know that the Ackermans singled people out who they didn't think were in the family enough. I watched my favorite relatives go through bullying, the same bullying I went through from my extended family. My cousin Raleigh, who's also deceased right now, my favorite, one of my favorites. She always saw me. She always understood me. And she always saw the positive in me. My other favorite cousin is my dad's cousin Nancy. And I got the privilege of spending 4 weeks in Vegas in rehab when I left Matthew. And I saw Nancy 3 or 4 times. And I asked her what she remembered about my youth and my childhood. And she said, I remember you being sad. I was. I am. Hurt and very sad. So people in my family who chose to see me did see me. But those who had expectations of their own believed in tough love, believed in consequences, told me who I could talk to, told me what I had to wear. Control like that causes people not to be able to form their own identity. Nancy got ostracized a little bit. Marilyn my favorite cousin, my dad's birthday gift. She showed up on his birthday a year later, who has never not been there for me, who is sick right now. They're still, I guess, doing some testing, but she's starting to get confused a little more. And my biggest fear is that my only advocate in the entire family is going to soon forget who I am. And I will never have existed in the first place. So that's why I'm doing this. And the last thing that made me realize I couldn't cry, I couldn't show emotion, and I couldn't show fear. Came the same year my grandmother died, after we all had the flu, and before we moved. And that's another story for another day. We're gonna end this one with I'm grateful for shelter and a home. Mollybug is what I call my youth, because I can see it in chapters vividly. Each trauma, each little part of myself I had to give. Each part of myself that I had to give because I had a parent who was embarrassed of it, I think. Embarrassed of me, embarrassed of my weight, I don't know. You'll have to ask her. I still don't know the answer. But I do know this. Feeling rejected like that by the one person who's supposed to love you no matter what is a fate worse than death. Until you get healthy. Real healthy. So I'm grateful for shelter and a home. And I'm grateful for having those first 5 years. And I am scared of my family. I'm terrified of you guys. That's why there's people protecting me. You've done physical harm. You've done psychological harm. You've done financial harm. There's no reason to. I've been here waiting to talk with love the whole time. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Remember, it ends well. I told you it'd get sad. But it ends well, I promise. Thank you. God bless. I'm grateful. Oh, and Tori, you heard me, you saw me, you acknowledged me, which means there must be a few other people that do too. I don't want to be a millionaire. I don't want fame. I just don't want anyone going through this ever again. God bless with peace and love.